Thank you for tuning in. This is Investing Insights with Barry Burnett. I'm your host, Barry Burnett, and I have a spectacular guest here in studio tonight. His name is David Aniel, and he put together a service 35 years ago, and you can reach him on iEvict.net. That's iEvict.net. David's service is for entrepreneurial property owners who have their portfolio, who have a tenant issue, either late payment or squatter or craziness, something that a tenant is doing, and you as an entrepreneurial owner, you got to call a professional. What happens if you serve your own notices? David, what happens if you serve your own notices?
If you know what you're doing, you'll be fine. We throw out about 3/4 of the notices that we get, and it ends up costing the client an extra week of lost rent.
So 3/4 of the ones that people do by themselves, they go online, they get to LegalZoom.com, and they pull down some paperwork, or they go to some other Walcott site, and they pull this down, and then they go serve it, and it's wrong.
And they lose when you get to court.
Okay, so they get all the way to court, and the judge says, that was a faulty service. So how do you do a proper service?
The notice has to have certain information on it and not information like no late charges, but it does have to have the correct amount of rent only, no other charges, no water charges, electric charges. It has to have the landlord's name, an address where the rent can be paid, a telephone number to the landlord. It has to spell out the days that the rent can be paid, and it has to spell out the times the rent can be paid. Okay, now I understand. You're not an attorney. You're not giving legal advice in this segment. This is for entertainment and information purposes only. That's correct, That's
right?
correct.
Okay, now, but your service, iEvict.net, does handle and do have attorneys on staff. So if somebody needs to reach out to you, all of this stuff is clearly at your fingertips for 3 decades, and you've served me and my clients for 2 decades. So what have we got? We've got this problem. If they send and request late charges, that's automatically going to get tossed, right?
Correct.
And that hasn't been for a long time. So if you hadn't heard that and you've just operated for a long, long time and you're charging late charges in your notice, that can get tossed by a judge, right?
That's correct. And a little while ago, about 2 months ago, a judge ruled that late charges that were collected in the past that should not have been collected may be credited towards rent, and therefore the amount of money in the 3-day maybe should be lowered by the amount of late charges collected.
Wow. Okay, so where do we hear about that as landlords and entrepreneurials, besides Investing Insights with Barry Burnett?
And iEvict.net.
Bingo. Okay, so this is really killer stuff. Okay, what happens when somebody that you don't know squats on your property? How do you get them out? You've got a restaurant building that's been vacant, and it's got a little alcove in the back, and people move in, vagrants, and they plop down, and they've been there for a period of time. How do you get them off the property?
What a lot of these occupants will do is they will turn on the power in their name, or they'll go over to a office supply store and buy a lease and fill it out. And when you as a landlord show up and you ask the police to please remove them, they'll show them the lease. The police will look at the lease and say, this is a civil matter. They'll hand you back the lease, or if you're lucky, you'll get a copy of the lease, so at least we'll get some names from it. And they'll tell you call your attorney, it's a civil matter.
Okay, now that's a really interesting thing, because I was just listening on the news the other day, and as confirmed by the California Association of Realtors, the California State Legislature has put in place a new law that becomes effective on August 1st that identifies that if someone provides a false document as a lease, that they're now culpable for criminal fraud and can be arrested and taken away. But in order to prove that, the landlord has to be standing there when the police arrive and say that's a false document and swear it out.
And we know how efficient the state of California is at prosecuting people that are committing fraud.
Oh, yes. Yes. They don't even prosecute among their own members. Well, this is Investing Insights with Barry Burnett, and I'm really glad that you're tuned in. What we're doing is we're having a spectacular conversation with David Aniel, the owner of iEvict.net. And there are some crazy, crazy law changes, and a lot of them are changed judicially, where a judge will issue an order, and you, the public, will never hear about it unless you get a hold of one of us or one of him. So that's iEvict.net or BarryBurnett.net. BarryBurnett.net. And if you register there, you'll have an opportunity to win dinner for two at Malbec Argentine restaurant in very chic Toluca Lake. It's one of Angela's and my favorites. And so I don't serve anyone anymore, because if I make a mistake, then I've stepped in it and I've cost myself, my clients, the rest of the tenants in the building or in the multiple properties or in my complex a real problem, because if I've got to get a problem tenant out, I want it done quickly, legally, and properly, so that I don't end up creating a huge, huge back-end risk for myself. You've identified already that this information, there are no two deals alike. But when the judges have identified that you can't charge late charges anymore unless you can prove the actual damage, and then you have to take it in front of a judge who may or may not agree with you and throw it out, he can charge you back for back late charges?
Because you were not asking for actual damages and you can't prove it, he can toss it out. And to sort of add insult to injury, if your tenant has a attorney and you lose at that point, the tenant and their attorney can then recover the attorney's fees from the landlord for losing the case.
Now, we're not trying to tell bad actor tenants how to go after good, solid landlords who just made a misunderstanding because the laws have changed. We're basically trying to say to the landlords, there are ways to handle this. Don't try to handle this yourself. Go to a professional. But let's talk about some of the real knuckleheaded things that have happened. What are some of the things that you've seen that are just real screamers?
Well, we always have our Hollywood highlights, which can always be interesting. We've had the rock star who stopped paying his rent and moved, actually, so that the case was resolved before it got too heavy. Because prior to going on tour or on vacation, we're still unclear on that, he decided to hide his guitars in the shower. And was gone for 3.5 weeks, didn't tell the landlord that he was gone, and
wow.
There was a plumbing problem, and the shower flooded because his $10,000 worth of guitars were in there. I'm sure if the guitars would not have been in there, the shower wouldn't have flooded.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and he sued the landlord for his damage to the guitars.
So what happened?
At the end of the day, he walked away. Everybody walked away. There was some unpaid rent, and nobody wanted to have bad publicity for this nice guy.
So, okay, so we've got a bunch of things that we're going to be coming right back to discuss, and we're going to talk about some of the crazinesses of evictions and why we hire a professional to handle these evictions, because some of them can get absolutely outlandish. I know David's got some really wild stories. Stay tuned. This is Investing Insights with Barry Burnett, and you can reach us at BarryBurnett.net. That's BarryBurnett.net. Stay tuned. We're coming right back.